Well, thank you for being here with us today. It's TBI Analytics podcast,
My
and
pleasure.
I just pulled you out of the crowd. TLU University. We're here at the Huntington Beach Paseo Hotel, and José Robles is
Yes.
here with us today. Attorney José Robles from Santa Ana, and I know this is on the spot, and he had no idea what he was even gonna be here. He didn't know what this is even about, and we are absolutely going off the cusp on this, so it's super genuine, and I appreciate that. And so thank you for being here.
Of course, thank you.
So Jose, you were telling me earlier that you are an attorney and you just broke off and started doing your own thing. Tell us where you're at in this world.
So, 3 years. I became an attorney 3 years ago. Started my own firm straight out of law school. A little older in life, but decided.
Older in life because you were part of the Marine Corps.
Well, I had a prior career. So I was in the Marines previously, and then I worked for a real estate auction company. Traveled around the U.S. More. Just fun, younger career. Mm-hmm. And then at a certain point, I had been out of the Marines for a while, and so the GI Bill came into play, and they basically paid for my law school. So I went back to school while I was working full time, got my law degree, and I'm like, well, what am I going to do with this?
Right.
So I left, started my own shop. I ended up getting some partners, and we grew a little bit.
Now,
and
did
then,
you start right away in a practice, or did you just have like a more of a boutique?
It was just me boutique. I was going to do estate planning, and then just kind of get everyone. A lot of my friends, most of the people I know, parents immigrated, bought a house for $100,000. Now it's worth $1 million.
Right.
And so if they pass, that's got to go through probate. So I was like, I can pay all the bills doing estate planning while I try to build my personal injury practice, because it's going to take time.
Sure.
And so that was kind of the plan. And then, things kind of change along the way. But now we're at a point where it's only personal injury and medical malpractice.
Right on. And you're super enjoying that, I'm sure.
Oh, I love it. I mean,
Yes.
it's absolutely amazing so far.
Yes,
So,
it's such a rewarding practice to be in.
Yeah,
I'm
I mean,
sure.
being newer, it's a lot more work. You're really, cutting your teeth and getting in there, and having to really work hard and take some cases that might not be ideal, but
Yep.
you're a new firm. You gotta
take it on. Yes. Well, good for you.
Thank you.
And along the way, have you had any experience with traumatic brain injury cases?
I have not. It's something that coming to these conferences, obviously it appears as though it's starting to really be a big deal. A lot more people are looking into. So when we do get cases, it is always something we consider to see whether or not there's a possibility, in which case at that point, because I haven't dealt with it yet, I'd obviously call a friend or a colleague, probably someone I've met here, to kind of help and assist and guide me along the way. But it's something that's always, every case we get that's motor vehicle accident, let's take a look at it.
Yeah, you gotta be looking for that, absolutely. Because as we know, I've worked on enough cases to know that somebody doesn't have to hit that head on a windshield or the steering wheel or anything, even the headrest, to have a brain injury, right? If they have enough of an impact and their head just shakes enough, that jello-like brain that we have of substance is shaking across that skull. That's sharp edges, and it's not going to do well, right, for that brain. And so, not obvious. It's an invisible injury. It affects everybody differently. It's not a cookie cutter. So how do you go about explaining this, right? Without that objective evidence, it's really hard. But now it's becoming so prevalent more because we have the research and the now updated imaging that's more advanced, and it's not just your standard brain MRI that's measuring just the structure of the brain. We are now measuring the white matter, gray matter, where that axonal injury is taking place. So we're actually measuring the right part of the brain.
I never knew that existed. I always thought it was like
in your eyes.
You have to tell by personality. Did their personality change? And
right.
My understanding previously had always been, no, you got to tell by what's their personality, how they changed. Do they now have anger issues, memory loss, all those basic
or cognitive
things.
motor skills are off.
But starting to hear all of this from you, I'm like,
so,
oh wow,
there's a whole other world out there. And honestly, you're not the only one. I mean, that's why I am so passionate about what I'm doing, because I know the audience that I have. And it's the attorneys that are doing everything they can for their clients, but feeling like they can't do everything because they are limited in what resources are out there. But now I'm cracking that code and showing everyone we have that advanced imaging now. And with the right, parts of the case to be able to warrant it, then we are absolutely showing actually where in the brain this person is injured. And we are measuring even our fiber tracts of the brain to show where it's off. It's really exciting.
So I have a question. The
Sure.
advanced imaging that you have now, is that something that is fairly common that you can find in most hospitals, or is it something that yourself and a particular group of individuals have, and where is it located? Like if we
Sure.
had a potential individual that we wanted to
Yeah.
use the imaging, where would we send them?
Right, good question. So this is clinical, and it is in university settings, I'm sure, and it came up from research, of course, and now in the last few years, it's really making its way into the clinical setting. And so we're able to utilize it because it's got a normative database to compare it to, so it's quantitative, it's AI driven, so it's no longer dependent on your expert to make sure they know all articles out there that explain this type of imaging, right? This is AI, it's FDA cleared. So we are actually outside of the insurance model, if you will, because we are working with advanced software that isn't recognized by your insurance, right? So of course, because it actually works, it actually shows what's going on. And we are now able to identify on a cognitive basis, on a behavioral basis, the clinical aspect of looking at this imaging and absolutely being able to see visually that there's something there. And then you get a neuropsychologist to understand the evaluation of how you understand how they were before the incident and after on their behavior side and a motor skill side. Mm-hmm. And when they can say, this lobe of the brain controls this aspect of a human being, right, and this person is off on a clinical setting in that aspect, well, there you go.
It's easier to understand, too.
Yeah, that's your 1-2 punch. And who's going to counter that? And so with those two experts, if you will, involved, it really has been the process to be able to diagnose and support the diagnosis of traumatic brain injury for these people and be that guide of, okay, now that we know what we're working with, okay, what can we ask for, you right. know? So you're able to kind of hone in better on those damages that way. So it's really exciting. So what we're doing is we have a license to this protocol that we are calibrating to facilities that have the proper equipment. So if there's a 3T, you can put this on what's called a 3T magnet, and the higher the magnet, the better the image is going to be, right? So you can do it on a 1.5T. That's no problem. It still comes out great, but even better on a 3T. So we have partners all across the state of California, and we are even going internationally. And so, yeah, we're in 5 locations in California right now. So in Santa Ana, we're at Simon Med in Irvine, Simon Med in Laguna. And so, yeah, we are sending these patients there. We're getting some great results. I've worked now with this product 330 cases so far, and really about maybe a handful come back with unsupported diagnosis because of whatever, right? So, but if you're doing the due diligence early on and having these people see a possible pain doctor or somebody that can document these injuries and the symptoms, maybe even a neurologist that understands traumatic brain injury, getting that documentation early on intake, or just understanding your client, asking lay witnesses, how were they before, how are they after, like you were getting recommended to do. But all of this can come together and tell its story. And then I also recommend getting even a visual aspect to it to show, like, what is the day in the life of somebody possibly doing something like that. But it really tells that story when you can have both supporting documents to go with it.
How have you seen the results actually translate into either settlement or jury verdicts?
Oh, it's crazy. Once an attorney understands how this is absolutely helping them in a demand letter sell cases, they're coming back. It's like every case. And you would be surprised at how many might be under your nose that are brain injured and you just don't know it.
Right.
They don't know it, right? So we recommend, you can find it online. It's a public, format with intake questions.
All the questions, right?
On how to, it's a Rivermead questionnaire. And it really just gives that doctor who's writing the order, even if you don't have a doctor on the case, like as far as a neurologist or somebody's treating, but you believe in your client and you believe this client is potentially brain injured, well, you can recommend them to, go to us and see if that's something that we can help them with. But what happens is we'll have our general physician do a telehealth call with them. They'll go over the symptoms and they say, well, you have to figure out if this is something you do have. I can write that order, but then you're going to have to go to a neurologist to do whatever else. But they can actually just get the order written.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask what would be the process or the steps for you, in other words, for us to send the client in.
Right.
And so you guys have a doctor to.
Exactly, and these cases can come at you at any time of the case, right? So sometimes you get them right after, sometimes you get them a year after. So it all depends on how is this case coming at me, right? It's like a puzzle to me. It's like, okay, have they had any neuropsych done? Have they had any imaging done? What can we do with this case that we have right now, right? Then if there is treating physicians on there, well, is this treating physician a neurologist or a pain doc? Are they going to see this person again? Are they going to recommend a brain MRI for this person? And we go there and we first start there, right?
Okay.
And then if it's outside of the treating model and you're looking at us to help as an expert, we can absolutely do that as well and not even look at it from that aspect.
Right.
So you can do it from both angles.
That's really awesome. Cool. Like right now I'm just thinking, I'm like, there's, again, it's not just these conferences, but there's so much out there to help us, right? Like in other words, it's like there's just all these tools in the tool belt now that for any little thing that we might have, it's like now we have some place to go that's only going to help build our case and make us better.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
That's so cool. Thank you for recognizing that. So I like to say we stay in our lanes, right? You're doing your job and keeping the law in order and doing right by your client in that regard. So it's a lot to know everything that's going on out there behind the scenes that can help. There's just not enough time in the day, right? So that's how I saw it, is like I thought of myself as just a channel of knowledge, as just a beacon. Here, this is who you need to use. This is who I would recommend you using, because of my experience is going to tell me, and my reputation depended on, having that credibility to tell you, yes, go there, and they're going to treat you right? So that has helped me to just know, okay, we've got something here, we're doing it. And so these attorneys are getting excited about what we're doing. So it's helping them settle cases. It's actually helping them pop policies, because sometimes these offenses,
of course,
they're not injured.
They're not going to believe it. Then you show up with objective evidence and
they're like, oh crap, So it's really exciting to see what we're able to do now. And like I said, I look at it like it's a smoking gun in a case now. Let's help these people get that reward that they deserve. It's not a reward, in my opinion. It's just helping them to get some kind of normalcy.
Which is interesting. I mean, oftentimes I've found myself telling clients, like, look, I don't want your case to be worth a lot. Right. If it's worth a lot, that means you've got issues.
Pretty bad. Yeah.
And so, like TBI, for example, it's something you wouldn't wish upon anyone.
No.
Yeah. If you look at it like, well, it's going to increase the value of my case. Yeah, but that at the detriment of your client.
Right.
So, it's not something that you want to have.
Absolutely.
But if it's there, you want to at least be able to identify it so that you can ultimately get them, what they deserve and the care that they need for it.
Exactly. So, yeah, I would say just to help identify when these cases might be able to come up is all you do is on intake, ask them these questions, and then just say, hey, these injuries can actually show up later than even 3 months after. They can actually progress 6 months after. So continue, just keep in touch with them and ask them those questions. And that's way you're documenting it from early on. Because if you miss that step, then it does look like we're fishing, right? And we obviously aren't trying to do that. We really just want to support. If they are injured, we want to get them the right imaging. And sometimes it takes 2 years after the incident before we are getting the right imaging, but we can still tell that story by saying, well, we didn't realize there was this imaging out there. Now we know, and now this is why we got to see if this person is still. And because the symptoms always predicate getting the imaging. If you don't have symptoms, well, then you're not going to need, right?
So because I'm barely learning about TBI and all of these things, I guess a question I would have is, if somebody, let's just say they do have TBI and they do have the symptoms, is imaging any different on day 1 versus day 365?
Good question. Really good question. So that all depends as well on how did the injury happen. Is it something where could be a brain bleed, and that brain bleed is now going to affect the brain in different ways than if they didn't have a brain bleed? So it does depend on how bad is the injury. And so, yes, it can look different as far as just where the injury is or how off they are compared to somebody that's not brain injured. But it can progress over time to where either it can, expand the brain or shrink the brain or what have you could happen, right? So when we're brain injured, it does swell, right? So the volume does increase. But also it can have atrophy, if you will. So we are going to see iron deposits as hemosiderin in the brain. That's toxicity that gets into the brain where it's supposed to be in the fiber tract, so the axonal shearing. So when that axonal shearing does happen, it's like splitting one of these cords, right? So when you split that cord open, you got these little wires going across. Well, now they're not connected anymore. It's not making that signal. And that's what we can show in imaging now.
Oh, wow.
And so you're actually literally going to the house on the map where this person is injured and showing them. And what it controls, right? So it's pretty impressive that we can, be able to do this now. So it's exciting.
I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, congratulations to you too for doing all of this and getting to this point. Exciting. That's amazing.
Yep. It's it's fun to be able to feel like I'm, a partner on the team, on the case, right? Just to help these people and know that we are doing good work. Yeah. So thank you for letting us have some of your time and enjoying this with you.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
First podcast, huh?
Yeah, it's my first podcast. First one. Thank you. With
me. I feel so honored. Yeah, and now when you have your podcast, Simplified?
Simplified. That will be the name, Simplified.
Yes. Yeah. And we're going to announce it on this because now we're putting it into action.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're speaking is there a camera I should look into?
Yeah, but yes, right here.
Yeah, Simplified.
Simplified, and tell us why you came up with Simplified. I love this story.
I was in the Marine Corps, so, Semperfi, always faithful, but I like to keep things simple. Everything can always be simplified, and ultimately, I think, I don't know who quotes it, but in other words, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. I love it. Simplified has always been something I've always tried to do, and everything I do is simplify everything. Mm-hmm. So, Semperfi, Simplified, Simplified. There we go.
I love it. I can't wait till it comes out.
Awesome. And thank you.
Yes, we'll be working together soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.